Hello, everyone. Today I will briefly summarize Dolley Madison, the wife of former 4th U.S. President James Madison, and the impact she had on U.S. history. Dolly Todd Payne was born on May 20th, 1768, the third child of the 9 children Mary and John Payne had in Guilford County, North Carolina. John Payne felt connected to Quaker ideals and in 1783 freed his enslaved people when Dolly was 15. Due to this, the family moved to Philadelphia, and when Dolly turned 22 years old, she married her first husband, John Todd, a Quaker lawyer. But then tragedy struck. Dolly Todd lost her father in 1792, and a year later in 1793 she lost her mother-in-law, father-in-law, husband, and one of her sons due to a yellow fever epidemic. Because of the loss of her husband and father-in-law, Dolly was very financially unstable since men were the ones who dealt with finances, having only $19 in her account. Dolly Todd needed to remarry quickly to keep her life together. Luckily, New York Senator Aaron Burr presented Dolly to her future husband, James Madison, a Virginia representative. Despite the 17-year age difference, they wed a year later in 1794, during September, making Dolly Todd now Dolley Madison. In 1797, James and Dolly left Philadelphia, and James resigned from the House of Representatives. The couple moved to the Multiplier Plantation in Virginia, where Dolly managed the estate and enslaved people. During the election of Thomas Jefferson in 1800, Jefferson asked James to become Secretary of State, to which James replied yes, and moved to Washington, D.C. with Dolly. During James' run as secretary, Dolley Madison established herself as a kind and generous person, often hosting events for President Thomas Jefferson during social seasons and when his daughters were unavailable to host. James Madison then became president in March 1809, and due to this, the couple moved to the White House. Shortly after they moved, Dolly worked with Benjamin Henry Latrobe, an architect, on the interior of the White House, giving a Greek and American stylistic furniture and the refinement and elegance of the White House awed visitors. Dolly Madison was also an excellent hostess at the White House, with one of her prominent events being the drawing rooms. Dolly's good social skills, entertainment, and hospitality supported the reputation of the White House and her family. But then tragedy struck again, the War of 1812. The British invaded Washington, D.C., including the White House. With only a few hours to spare, Dolly Madison saved a portrait of George Washington and other important documents, like a copy of the Declaration of Independence. According to Woman in the American History, reports of her quick thinking and bravery, combined with her dedication to rebuild the city, impressed the public. For many, Dolly symbolized the values with which Americans prided themselves. These values included being down-to-earth, authentic, brave, tough, resilient, and refusing to be beaten down. For the rest of her life, Dolly was seen as a national hero. Some even called her America's Queen. When James ended his last term in 1817, the family returned to Multiplier, where they desired a peaceful retirement. Nevertheless, Payne Madison, Dolly and James Madison's son, had a gambling issue and gambled away the family's money. Later on, James Madison died in 1836, which caused Dolly financial problems. And there was the Panic of 1837, a fiscal crisis in the U.S. because of all these economic and financial issues. Dolly sold James Madison's financial papers to Congress and sold some of her enslaved people as well. Dolly Madison then moved to Washington again in 1837. Where she moved, according to the White House Historical Association, was and her sister Anna Payne's Cud's former home on Lafayette Square. Dolley Madison then died on July 12, 1849, at the old age of 81. Now, what was the impact Dolley Madison had on U.S. history? Dolley Madison became a representation of what a good First Lady should be: kind, generous, sociable, and gracious, but also resilient, quick-witted, and loyal to her people and party. She became an early feminist and pioneer for women and the U.S. alike, never considering herself less than a man because of her Quaker belief that men and women should be considered equal. Dolley also supported charities and organizations supporting the welfare of orphans. According to Miller Center, Dolley devoted her energies to improving the welfare of orphaned children in Washington, D.C. She assumed leadership of the cause, donated her time and money, and encouraged other women to follow her example. Another thing that should be noted is the act of sacrifice, courage, and bravery Dolley took when the British invaded Washington, D.C. She was loyal and adaptable, and would not let the patriarchy or any person take advantage of her. Dolley supported what she believed was right for her people and country, being an open-minded individual and encouraging the progressive ideas of others. This can all be summarized in some quotes by Dolley Madison. I have never been afraid to speak my mind and advocate for causes that I believe in. And I believe in the power of education and the importance of women's access to knowledge. This shows how Dolley was an early feminist and progressive person for her country, serving her country and people first, regardless of gender. The impact Dolley Madison had on the U.S. was proficient, since she showed that women could also show strength, knowledge, and courage, and should not be objectified or treated with disrespect just because of their gender.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment.
Dolley was not only feminine, social, and gracious, being one of the best White House hostesses the U.S. has ever had, but also the progressive, anti-patriarchy, and educated person that she was. Dolley truly was America's queen. In conclusion, this is the impact Dolley Madison had on U.S. history.